Well, good evening and welcome to another wonderful episode of Porch Talk. I, of course, am Paul W. Marino, and my guest host tonight is the one and only Tammy Daniels.
Good evening, everybody. I'm glad
Thank
to be
you
here.
for coming, Tammy.
Yeah.
This is wonderful. So, we are going to be talking about a couple of things, one of which is the hospital is going to be coming back. I believe they said that it would be coming in January.
Yes. Well, at least the first phase should start in January. That depends on if the application goes through. They're still going through the application process. Though I think there's enough push behind it that it's going to get through. They seem very confident that it's going to happen. Congressman Neal is confident it's going to happen. So when they do open, they're only going to open 25 beds total. So just med-surg beds. So the idea is that they'll be, if you go in and you don't feel well, you need to be under observation, they can admit you. So you don't have to go to Pittsfield anymore, right? Or if there's surgeries, they'll be able to do more surgeries because they will have med-surg beds. So a patient can go upstairs and be admitted and stay a day or two before they go home. So that will open up more surgeries within the hospital too. But a lot of this is going to be starting, like you said, in January. They're going to start 4 or 5 beds.
And when those are filled, they'll open another 5.
Another 5, yeah.
And another until they have their 25 beds full.
Right.
Now, before we go on about this and get too deep into it, Joanne, would you please put the photo in front of us? We have a quiz again this week. This photo was taken toward the end of the 1970 strike. Of course, what it says there's thanks RC. This was taken, I believe, outside the Brown Street Mill, and below there's the IUE and the AFTE, 2 of the 3 unions that were involved in the strike. The question is, what is the great irony of this photograph? What is the great irony? If you think you know what it is, if you just have a shot in the dark, please give us a call at 664-4408. And if you are right about what the great irony of this is, you will win bragging rights until the first Friday in September. Woo-ha!
Yeah.
So, all right, you can put us in front of it. Ooh, I forgot what I look like. Scary. So, anyway, I was there, and at the presentation when they spoke about the hospital, and you'll be happy to know that I behaved myself.
Yes, you did.
The question that I really wanted to ask, but decided probably shouldn't do this, was what took them so long? Now, the thing is, the reason the hospital closed was not because it wasn't making money.
Right.
The parent company, Northern Berkshire Healthcare, made a bad investment during the real estate bubble. The bubble burst, and suddenly they were bankrupt. And I'm not sure I understand how they can be bankrupt when all of their sub-companies were making money. The hospital was operating in the black.
The hospital was just operating in the black, so it was just operating in the black, and they had done a number of renovations. They had purchased the doctors. I want to say the doctor's building because we get confused with the doctor's building. They had purchased the practice that had been out by the airport because they wanted to make sure that they could keep primary care doctors. So you're right, they had a lot of affiliates, but they also were in debt like almost $50 million. I mean, there was a huge amount of debt, and they had to pay down that debt. So it's like you can say, oh, I'm making money, right? But, maybe I owe $300,000 in my paycheck, even though I seem like I can pay all my bills and all this stuff. I've still got this huge debt. Like anybody who's owned a house knows that you usually have a very large debt that you have to pay off. And they couldn't, it was the payments on the debt. And they had tried to negotiate that down with their debt holders, who apparently refused, as far as we can tell. This is from going to the court. This all went to U.S. District Court in Springfield. So we trekked down to Springfield quite a few times to cover the bankruptcy. The debtors, the debt holders did not want to renegotiate. They couldn't make payroll. And they had warned 3 months before that they weren't going to make payroll in 3 months, and almost to that day. I mean, when I got the call saying that there was going to be a big news story coming out, the first thing I said to the person is the hospital's closing. And they said, yes, that's correct. Because they couldn't make another payroll of the week.
That's interesting, because I recall hearing that they have to give a 3-month warning before they close the hospital. And as far as anyone in the city knew, it closed on 3 days' notice.
3 days' notice, yes. There were warnings, but I don't think there were any. There seemed to be no formal notification that was going to happen. But I think right up until almost the last minute, they were hoping that they could renegotiate this debt. At some point, I know Berkshire Health Systems had been involved.
Yeah, they were poised to buy the hospital when it was making money.
Yeah, but if they had bought it, they would have had to take on all that debt. So I think that was, nobody has ever actually really wanted to go on record on some of this stuff, but the articles that we've read, the things that people have said, it seemed that it just wasn't going to be a good deal, because they would have had to deal with it too. So that debt had to be wiped out. And that's how it ended up in bankruptcy court, because they went 2 bankruptcies. Chapter 11, which was a restructuring, so they tried to restructure, and then I'd have to look it back up, but I think it was Chapter 7, which is liquidation. And at that time, the Attorney General, who of course was, oh my God, now I'm drawing a blank. She went to Drury High School.
I know who you mean. She's governor now.
No, she's not.
No, she's not.
No, she's not. Not the one before. I can't remember. She went to Drury High School. Oh my God, I'm having it's late Friday. And I'm having trouble remembering what happened yesterday. But anyways, Martha Coakley. Martha Coakley was the state attorney general at the time. She had come in, and she had been working behind the scenes to try to delay what was happening. And then when they came in and filed Chapter 7, it was all, she couldn't do anything after that. It was all over. I mean, there was supposed to be this big investigation. That investigation kind of went nowhere. There was a lot of words that were said.
If all this had come out at the time to actually get people to understand what was happening.
Yeah. And it was still, I mean, the hospital itself was making money, but it wasn't sure that it was going to continue to make money, because there was also issues with Medicare and Medicaid payments. They had, Northern Berkshire Healthcare had previously tried to get this critical access hospital designation, which is for rural hospitals that do not have access to larger facilities within a certain distance. So they had tried to get that before. They were not able to get it because of Berkshire Medical Center. Because at the time, they said Berkshire Medical Center was considered to be close enough within 35 miles on a highway that they could not give them that access. And I know other people have said, well, Fairview got it. Well, I think Fairview had gone for this fairly early on. I don't remember exactly, but regulations change, rules change all the time, right?
Yeah.
So they had been able to get it at a time before some of those rules changed. So this time around, and I think the BMC, BHS officials have been looking at this for a long time, because I know that there are a certain number of rooms that were not touched, really. They were kept. So that option could be there. So they were able to get it this time around, or are applying to get it, because the regulations changed again.
Yeah, so Route 7.
It was Route 7.
Which disallowed it is now allowing
Is
it.
now allowing it, because now they're saying a highway under these rules has to be 4 lanes. And Route 7 is 2 lanes. So it's not a 4-lane highway anymore, which means that they have to, so means that there should not be any facility within 15 miles. So now you're way out. I want to say 25, 30 miles maybe,
Yeah.
20 from
Because
NRH to
when I
BNC,
go down
yeah.
to the ostomy clinic there, it's about a half-hour drive.
Right, yeah. It's so, you know, I know that it's 25 miles from my driveway in Stamford. It's exactly 25 miles to the Berkshire Eagle, because I drove that for many years. So I know exactly how far it is. And so that's not that far from BMC. It's on the other end of North Street. So now they're outside of that 50-mile limit, which allowed them to go for the critical access. I think Congressman Neal apparently had something to do with this in trying to help them get it. So getting the critical access means that they can get 25 beds, med-surg beds, and they will get higher reimbursements for Medicare and Medicaid, which is a large issue on making sure it's sustainable. And that is one thing that the president of BHS, Darlene Rodowitz, the one thing she has said, it has to be sustainable, which is another reason why they're going to slowly phase it in. They have to make sure they have the staffing, they have to make sure they have the patients, and they have to make sure that they're going to be able to get the reimbursements they need to be able to do this.
Wow. Hey,
Yeah.
you don't necessarily want a historian, you want a news person.
Who is also a historian, so there
Yes,
you go.
there you go. So the thing I did ask about that would be interesting to see if it happens is that one thing my mother didn't like, you know, before she retired and after she retired, was that the North Wing had been renamed the Larigo Wing, and no one ever called it that.
Yeah, you brought that up. I don't remember that happening.
George Larigo was the longtime president, and I think he died, and they decided to name the North Wing after him. But nobody called it that. If you were calling from 3rd North, you called from 3rd North instead of 3rd Larigo.
Right.
And I think it would be nice if that was remembered in the new opening. And even if they don't call the unit on
Larigo,
2nd North Larigo,
there should be a sign
Yeah.
when you come in that it's the George. And I remember him because he was president of, and ran the hospital when I was there. And we always joked that back then, one guy ran the whole hospital with a couple of his buddies who worked in maintenance, and they would come down. I worked in the cafeteria at the time, and they would come into the cafeteria, and there was a round table and one phone. He had one phone in the cafeteria, and that table was by the phone, and that was Mr. Larigo's table. You didn't sit at that table. It was for him. And he would come down, he would spend time in the cafeteria, and he would talk to everybody, and he would do his business on the phone in case they had to get a hold of him. Yeah.
Yeah, and I
As
remember
soon as he
him-
left, we had 3 new people as administrators, so there you go.
Oh, yeah. And
Just
that
blown.
was something about it that bothered me when I was working there. They were taking the Clark House and making it over into offices.
Yeah.
And they were laying off the aides and licensed practical nurses and hiring executives. So you get rid of the people who do the work
Yeah.
and you replace them with people who get paid a lot more. And I can see how you can do that and still save money, but on the other hand, these people were the one who did the work. And when my mother was volunteering, they were asking volunteers to take over some of that work that used to be done by the aides,
Yeah.
such as grabbing bedpans and such. And none of the volunteers wanted to do that.
Yeah. I can imagine. Yeah, I've been through one very large layoff at the hospital. That was back in the late 80s. That was pretty devastating because I was union steward up there at the time. And so the hospital had gone through a number of convulsions where, layoffs and consolidations. And I'm so old, I can remember when the patient count would be like 180. And towards the end, it was probably about 2025, really. So, we bring these beds back, it's going to be almost like it was when it closed. It's going to be close to it, yeah. But
Well, I have 2 stories to tell you about the hospital that will sound as if they have nothing in common.
okay,
But as it happens, they have everything in common. Now, both of these are true stories from my own life. The first one, now in both of them, I'm not sure how old I was. Say between 4 and 8, because even 8 is still pretty small. So I was in the room and I was crying. Crying to the point of hyperventilating. There was a nurse in the room, and the nicest thing she could think of to say was, "If you didn't cry, that wouldn't happen." And I would love to go back in time and give her a good backhanded slap and then go and comfort my past self. Now, the second story has to do with taking a bath in the hospital. Now, when I was a little boy, my concept of taking a bath did not include washing. Taking a bath meant getting in the tub with my older brother, who was 3 years older than me, and we had a mountain of suds and a few soaky toys. Remember soaky toys? Yeah, and our mother sat by and watched. That's what was taking a bath.
yeah.
So one day, I'm sitting in the hospital room, just kind of chilling, and a nurse that I'd never seen before, with a face like a Marine drill sergeant, marched in, and she's carrying a pan of water, a little bar of soap, a washcloth, and a towel, and she plumps them down on the bedside table without saying a word, and marches out again with a meaningful glare in her eye. And I didn't know what she wanted. I didn't know she wanted anything, so I didn't do anything. And when she came back in, she started having conniptions. "You haven't done a thing!" Now, brace yourself for the rocket science. When my parents came to visit, because of course that had to be done during visiting hours, not only did my mother tell me what this strange woman had wanted, she showed me how to do it. Yeah. Now, if those implements had been brought to either of us today, we'd know exactly what was expected of us. Now, what do these stories have in common? It's only since about 1973, 50 years ago, that hospitals in general began to realize that children in the hospital are not adult patients in smaller packages. And that's exactly what was going on with those two nurses. The first one, what she said was a variation on the corny old joke, "Doctor, it hurts when I do this." Well, don't do that. Yeah, if you didn't cry, you wouldn't lose your breath. Yeah, she was treating me like a little adult. And the second one, same thing. She would not have to explain to an adult what to do with these things. Why should she have to explain it to a little kid? And when I'm in the emergency room, which happens more and more these days, I like telling that story to the nurses. And one of them that I told it to said, "Oh, yes. She has student nurses under her, and she still has to tell them to treat children like they are children."
Oh, wow.
So,
But
and
I guess, you know, when you're talking about student nurses, they're barely out of childhood themselves, so.
oh yeah,
it
but
probably doesn't occur to them either,
at Berkshire Medical Center and when I was in rehab, we had student nurses coming in from, I forget what, Mount Holyoke College. And in both places, I told the student nurses those stories, you know, and yeah, it's something they have to remember when they become actual nurses.
Well, you'd be interested to know that I had a little preview of the new MCLA clinical classrooms in the doctor's building on the hospital campus. And they have some really, really fascinating technology up there, including full body mannequins that can get sick and cry and speak and have heart attacks.
Oh, yeah.
And have asthma. I didn't get a chance to actually see them operate, but I was told how they would work. And the classroom itself is a ward. It's set up as a ward. It's MCLA 3 North. So there's the nurses' stations, there's patient rooms. They've got an infant, a child, and 2 adults that can go back and forth. They can be older or younger or male or female. And they can go, and so the nurses, when they come in, will almost like a flight simulator. And they'll be watched how they're doing, and they've got everything set up so it records everything that's happening. It's really kind of fascinating. So speaking of that, I'll have to see that how they treat the infant and the child mannequins when they're working on
Well, you know,
them.
when I worked up there, I was in housekeeping, floor care specialist. And at one point, I had to go and work in pediatrics, and remembering what it was like.
That over on 3rd
with
General?
these-
When it was on 3rd General?
Yeah. And I remembered what the nurses had been like, and I was not at all looking forward to being there. And it was amazing. Well, of course, there weren't as many kids,
Right.
but the nurses calling them honey. Talking to them very nicely, just like there's the sweet little things that they are. There was a baby up there one night, well, a toddler, and both arms were in casts.
Oh, boy.
So, but he was about to be in my way, so I picked him up, and as soon as he was up here, he went onto my shoulders, and I said to the nurses, "Wow, his father must have a beard." Nope, He just loves everybody.
Oh, jeez.
Yeah, that was beautiful.
So how long were you in housekeeping up there?
A couple of years.
Yeah. In the 70s or?
Late
70s?
70s, early 80s.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, and then I burned out and I had to go do something else, so I went to college.
Oh, well, yeah, that's an option, I guess, you know.
Yes.
You could do that.
And I was a much better student then than I was at the high school level.
Yeah. Sometimes you need a little time in between before you realize what you're going to do.
Well,
Yeah.
also, I had some serious problems in high school. From junior high on, I was chronically depressed.
Oh, geez.
I had virtually no self-esteem. And what was the other thing? Oh, yes, my emotional age was roughly 3 years behind the rest of me. And the thing is, child psychology was in its infancy.
Yeah.
So when these things started developing, nobody knew what it was. Depression, it's just someone being unhappy.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah. So I was an adult for quite a while before my emotional age caught up with me, and then I found out the other things that were wrong. So today, assuming my emotional age is still 3 years behind me, well, I'm 69, which gives me an emotional age of 66. Wow. What a difference!
And you didn't spend millions of dollars to do it like that.
That's
Like that
right.
billionaire who's turning into a vampire because he's trying to stay young, right?
But I am so glad that I was born in the summer rather
Yeah.
than the fall, the late
Yeah.
fall, because when I was born in the old hospital, and the new hospital was being built behind it.
That's right.
And it was a rainy day in November when all the patients were transferred in one day. And I've seen the photo of Dr. Eddie pushing a
Really?
12-year-old in a wheelchair. And according to my mother, and I would trust her to know because she was a maternity nurse, the way that the babies were transferred on that rainy day was each one was put in the bottom of a plastic trash bag, and the nurses carried them over, one hanging from each hand. Yeah, they did things they wouldn't do today.
Oh my God.
I remember once getting a towel bath with alcohol. You know, the towel was soaked in alcohol.
Oh
They
my
don't do that anymore
No,
because
no,
now
no,
they
no.
know the kid can absorb
Absorb
the
the
alcohol,
alcohol.
get alcohol poisoning.
Oh my God. That's going to be in my head now. Pictures or it didn't happen. No.
And you know, when my mother was in nursing school in the 30s,
Where did she go to school?
Deaconess in Boston,
Oh, okay. All right.
she got in because her father was a Methodist minister. And in fact, he's the one that sent in the application.
Oh, so
Yeah,
she was going to be a nurse.
Well, she graduated from high school and she was just kind of hanging around. They said, you know, you can't hang around like this. Yeah, I know. And then kept hanging around. And one day she came home. There's a letter for you from Deaconess. You've been accepted. So she moved to Boston and went to nursing school, and she did two things.
Yeah.
When she was born, she was named Sarah Jane after both of her grandmothers. Then both grandmothers said, well, I don't want her named after me. So to the end of their days, her parents called her Jenny. But once she got into nursing school, she decided her name is Jane.
Jane.
And Jane is what she was for the rest of her life. The other thing is she had long hair from the time she was a little girl, and in nursing school she decided that's going to be too much trouble. So she cropped it off a little shorter than yours.
Yeah.
It came down here around the ears. When she went home for the summer, her parents would not speak to her for 3 days.
Oh my God.
Well, it's because of my namesake, St. Paul, who said that women are naturally ashamed of having short hair.
Well, a guy said it, so yeah, okay.
Yeah. And men are naturally ashamed of having long hair. What planet was he from?
Not this one, yeah.
Yeah, but now my grandmother, you look at pictures of her and you would swear she had short hair.
Yeah.
I didn't find out until, not long before her death. She had hair down to her waist.
Yeah.
But she braided it, wrapped the braids up around the top of her head, held them in place with heavy steel pins.
I've never understood that.
Yeah, and
long hair, and your hair would always be up so you couldn't see it. So what was the
Yeah.
point of having long hair? When
Well,
I get to the point
because
where
it
I
was
have to start
proper.
putting in a ponytail, that's when I cut it off. When I get to that point, like I got to keep it away. Oh, time to take it off.
Yeah, so in 59 years of marriage, her husband never saw her with her hair down.
It's strange.
Strange folks.
Yeah.
Well, we also wanted to talk about Johnson School.
Yes, Johnson School. And so if anybody's watching this tonight,
Oh, there are at least 2 people
at least
out
2
there.
people, tell your friends. There is an open house at Johnson School tomorrow, Saturday, what are we, August 19th? Tomorrow,
Yes.
19th? Yeah.
Yeah, 19th.
Yeah,
He
August
didn't
19th.
tell
Yes,
me
August
that.
19th. So tomorrow, August 19th, Saturday from 10 to 4, there's an open house at Johnson School because it has been redeveloped into 14 apartments. So, and I got a tour of that last week. That's Dave Morazy and Associates. He put a lot of work into it, but he kept a lot of parts that made it a school. So I think a lot of people who went to school there are going to be very interested to see what happened.
Oh, yes. The only thing I don't like is that they bricked off the top of the chimney.
Yeah.
Because, well, of course, I went there K through 6. Both of my brothers went there K through 8. But I remember looking at that and thinking it's an observation tower and wondering, how do you get to it?
Okay.
Yeah, and I could never figure that out until finally I learned about the Mahoney system of ventilation.
Oh, right. You know, I meant to ask him about that too. Because, of course, now there's all new heating and cooling systems in there. And in one of the when you're talking about the duct, that's where the elevator is. So there's an elevator in there to go up to all of the floors. But yeah, I had meant to ask him about the Mahoney system, and I think it's gone out of there now because of the way they
Yeah,
had to
very
do it.
likely.
Yeah.
Well, the Mahoney system was, in its day, state-of-the-art in built-in
Yeah.
ventilation. And the core of it was a large chimney, a large central chimney. And it kept the furnace running full blast, year-round. What a gorgeous gorgeous use of coal.
Cool, I know.
So, and what that did, all that heat going up the chimney created airflow that drew the used air out of the classrooms, hallways, and water closets through the ducts and sent it up the chimney. And in the meantime, fresh air was being drawn in through ducts at ground level. And in inclement weather, that air was channeled directly to the classrooms. And if you were ever in a classroom that had a large grating near the
Yep.
floor and then a large grating higher on the wall with a dial thermometer in the center, that's the Mahoney system. And in cold weather, they would close certain dampers and open others so that fresh air would pass by the furnace and arrive heated. And the thing is, a building that has the Mahoney system in it works just as well today as it ever did. The only thing is, it's not practical
Right.
to keep the furnace
Furnace
running
running,
full
right.
blast year round. And I've heard of another style of the Mahoney system. I think there are some in Pittsfield. There are 4 chimneys. Only one is the exhaust. The others are to draw the fresh air in.
Oh, okay.
And that was retrofitted into Drury Academy.
Right.
And in the same year, it was designed into the Church Street School.
Where was the Church Street School?
It was across the street from Mark Hopkins Hall.
Oh,
So those 2 brick buildings there, they were probably built from brick salvaged from the school.
Oh, I didn't realize that.
Yes. And then it was designed into every school the city built after that. So it was designed into Freeman School.
I remember the grades at Freeman.
Yeah.
Probably Houghton too.
Houghton and Brayton, because they
Right.
were
Oh,
both
the old
built the
Brayton,
same
right.
year.
Right.
And in fact, they were duplicates of each other. And it was designed into Johnson School. And in schools where it was too small to use the furnace, they used stoves, you know, and stoke the stoves, and that would create the airflow.
Huh. Well, it's all upgraded now. There's all brand new boilers. There's all these heat exchangers. So heating and cooling, everything's all wired up, all modern. So, yeah. But there's still, it's interesting because, you know, when some of them, there's some 2-bedroom and mostly 1-bedroom. And then there's the penthouse, which was like the auditorium on the 3rd floor. That's done over as all one unit. But that was interesting.
Yeah, they kept the skylights.
The skylights are amazing. Yeah,
Yeah,
they're huge, huge skylights
with wainscoting.
with wainscoting up them. Yeah, but I thought it was interesting, and I don't remember this in the other schools I went to.
Well,
the main quarters on the 1st floor and then on the 2nd floor, huge common areas in between the classrooms, and they're very large.
oh
I mean,
yeah, well,
Freeman had
they were
hallways.
there at Johnson School as well.
Right, that's what I'm talking about. In Johnson School, and those rooms are still there. So why were those rooms so large? What were they used for?
I don't specifically remember, and I was there for a long time. They were just used as hallways. Yeah. Although when I was in the Guild Players Touring Company, we put on a play there, and it was done in the 1st floor.
Yeah, absolutely, you
Central
could
hall.
do that. Yeah, because those central halls are big enough.
Yeah.
So one of the things I think he's done is he's furnishing them, because 1-bedroom apartment isn't that big.
Yeah.
So, but there's very large common space. I mean, you could put a pool table out there. You could do a lot of things. So there's an idea that your front porch could actually be this common room where
Yeah.
you could get to meet your neighbors. And I had asked him about, would it be able to, why didn't you use part of that? And he said that the issue had been light. There's no windows, because all the windows are on the outside, and you've got this common room with nothing but, there's no natural light coming into it. So they couldn't really use it to integrate it into the apartments. So I thought that was kind of interesting.
Now, the other thing about the auditorium is when I went to Freeman, which was 7th and 8th grade, we were not allowed on the 3rd floor. It was condemned.
Oh, I don't even remember that.
It gets better.
Okay.
When I was in high school, I was in the school chorus and the men's octet.
Yeah.
And one day, the men's octet was brought up there to do a performance. Guess where we did it?
On the 3rd floor?
On the 3rd floor. No longer condemned.
I don't think I was ever on the 3rd floor.
It was the length of the school.
Right, it would have been.
Or at least the width of the school.
Yeah.
And there was a small, low stage at one end.
Huh. So it must have been condemned again by the time I got there, because I remember the basement, there were classrooms in the basement, and then the 1st and 2nd floor, and I don't remember the 3rd floor at all. Though I do remember the top floor at Houghton. Mm-hmm. Because I think that's where the gym was. I mean, it must have been a gym auditorium, because I swear that we went up there for gym.
That could be.
Yeah, and I was very small. I remember all the stairs going up, because of course we moved to East School when I was in 1st grade, or Sullivan School, as it's called now. Mr. Sullivan was my principal, so yeah.
Now, did you notice the monument outside Freeman School?
Probably not.
Yeah, that's something that bothers me. All the time that I was at Johnson School, no one ever told us who Johnson was.
That was my next question.
And why
who
they
is
would name a school.
Johnson?
Well,
Is it the Johnson Grays?
yes.
Oh, okay, that was close. All right.
That land was purchased from the estate of Sylvander Johnson.
Okay.
And the man for whom the Johnson Grays were named. And the plot that the addition was built on in the 1920s
Right.
was purchased from someone who had bought it from his estate.
Okay. Because I tried to do some research on it, and I was going through the transcript, and I can find the point where in the 50s where they were talking about should they close the school, should they do something with the school. And then I kept going back, and I couldn't find anything saying like when the school was built, because those papers seem to be missing.
1898.
Right, but I couldn't find the newspaper talking about it. So there's parts of the transcript that are not online. I go through newspaperarchive.com.
Yeah.
And so those were missing. And then I was looking, and I said, I can't find, and I even went to your website, and I couldn't find anything to say who was the school named after, because I had no idea.
I've got it there.
It must be. I must not have been looking in the right place, because I was looking through buildings, and I was looking through stuff. I'm like, and I was typing it in, and I'm like, why is nothing
go
coming
stand
up?
in the corner. And before we continue this raucous conversation, remember, we are asking what is the great irony of the photo behind us. If you have an idea, if you have no idea but just want to guess, if you have a shot in the dark, please give us a call at 664-4408. Oh, that's a North Adams education for you. So, yeah, please give us a call. If you're sick of listening to the two of us drone on like this, give us a call, 664-4408. We are desperate to hear from you. Well, I am anyway.
Yeah.
So, now, I forget now what I was going to say before that.
Oh, we were talking about the schools.
Oh, yes. And Sylvander Johnson.
Johnson, okay. So it was surprising that the full name isn't on the school, and it's never referred to. You know, because we talk about Haskins School, you will always find stories that say Sarah T. Haskins.
Yes.
Right.
Well, the thing is, when those 4 schools were built, North Adams was building 4 neighborhood schools.
Right.
And of course, Johnson School was built to replace the Vesey Street School.
Yes, that's what the article was about, whether or not they should fix up Vesey Street School or tear it down.
Yeah, and they tore it down.
And they tore it down, right.
And, well, my research told me that it was, I think the building was condemned, but then they decided not to close it
Right.
because they could use it for an annex for Johnson School,
Right.
which apparently they did until the boiler was condemned, and then everyone went to Johnson School.
Yeah, that's back in the days when we had 40 or 50 kids in a classroom. And I did find that in one of the transcript articles talking about how many kids were in the classroom, and it was 51. So I said, oh, well, I was pretty close when I
Yeah.
sorry, there was 40 or 50 kids in a classroom. Now it's like you don't want kids more than 15 kids in a classroom. That's
And I've had a couple of strange dreams about
Yeah.
that school.
Johnson? Yeah.
Yeah. I had one dream where there was a door up on the wall. You know, like you go up on the second floor and there's a door up there. Not sure how you're supposed to get to it, but somehow we got up to it. And it went through a narrow hall that came out onto the roof of the addition.
Oh.
You know, and going back inside, I looked in one of the doors off the hall, and there's a locker room there. You know, bizarre thing.
Yeah.
And then another dream, there was a hallway that couldn't exist in real life, but it went to the principal's private library.
That sounds scary.
Yeah, but full of books, full of old artifacts.
Yeah.
Just the kind of place I'd like
You
to
sure
visit.
you weren't at Hogwarts?
No, I'm pretty sure.
Okay.
I might have been up on the mountain. So we have about 10 minutes remaining. I know something else I wanted to discuss. The Susan B. Anthony home
Yep.
is having a grand opening pretty soon. They're going to have a new exhibit.
Right, that's next week, yep.
Yes, and it's a cast of the hands of Susan B. Anthony and Elizabeth Cady.
Yep, Elizabeth Cady Stanton, yeah.
Yeah. I was surprised at first when I saw the photo because the way they describe it, Susan B. Anthony and Elizabeth Cady Stanton, hand in hand, cast, and all it is the two arms.
Right, I guess the thing is that you can go either way. There's, Elizabeth Cady Stanton's on one side, and you flip it, and it's Susan B. Anthony. And I did a little research on that too, and it was fascinating that they did it. They did it for Stanton's 80th birthday. They had a gala for her in New York City, and they were talked into having this cast done at a sculpture studio. And a woman did it, a woman sculptor. Her name was Mebna. I can't think of her last name, but it's in the article on iBerkshires. So she also did casts of Susan B. Anthony's hand. And then they did the one of them clasping hands and a bronze of it. So the one that's at the Birthplace Museum is plaster. but apparently there is a bronze casting that's at Elizabeth Cady Stanton's home at the National Women's Historic Site. Oh my God, I can't think of the name of it. Yeah, I want to say Rochester. It's not Rochester. It's Seneca Falls, where they had the first convention was. Yeah, and it's in her house when you go there. So
her children did not like Susan B. Anthony.
Yeah.
I found that out watching Ken Burns' series
really?
on her. She babysat so that Elizabeth could get some work done, but she wanted the children to be quiet.
It sounds like a nurse.
Yeah. Well, the thing is, Elizabeth didn't mind the children playing noisily because they were being kids.
Well, you have enough kids, your mother, when they're quiet, you don't want them to be quiet because when they're quiet, bad things are happening.
Yeah.
And if they're making noise, you know what they're doing, right? So, but Susan B. Anthony didn't have kids, so.
Well, that puts me in mind of a work of fiction I found in the transcript once.
Yeah.
And I've been kicking myself since because I never made a note of the date and page.
Yeah.
They often published fictional works that taught a lesson or some such thing.
Yeah.
And this certainly did. Guy comes home from work. I'm sorry, I should say a man came home from work and his children are out playing and they are dirty. Their clothes are dirty, they're dirty all over. And he looks over at the neighbor's children, they're sitting out on the porch and they are spotlessly clean. And when he complains to his wife, she, no big deal. Well, he keeps noticing how dirty his children are. And then one day a disease sweeps through the city and all of the neighbor's children die.
Oh my God.
His own children, however, stay healthy, and now his wife explains things to him that I don't mind them getting dirty because the dirt washes off, and when they are out there getting dirty, they are staying healthy. The neighbor's children weren't allowed to get dirty, hence they were not healthy. And he doesn't complain anymore. Well, we have 5 minutes left, so because you did not call in with an answer about this photograph, Joanne, put it in front of us, please. Thank you. I am going to, I'm going to let you explain this one because we did talk about it before the show.
Right?
What is the great irony of this photograph?
Well, they are thanking R.C. Sprague after the strike for agreeing to certain things and thanking him for coming back. And this is about the time that R.C. came back and started shipping jobs out.
Yes. Well done.
And
you can come out of the corner now.
Right. Well, it ties into, like I told you, I've been reading David Halberstam's The Reckoning about the auto industry, and some of the same things were happening at Sprague were happening throughout the auto industry and manufacturing. That's when the jobs started disappearing. In the
Joanne,
70s.
You can put us on again.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Right. In the 70s and then the 80s, that's when the jobs started to disappear. And they started shipping them overseas because it was cheaper to get them over there. And as he was saying, that the people who created these businesses way back were interested in their product. And his theory is that as those people left and retired, the people who replaced them were more interested in profit.
Well, yeah, but RC was involved in the company, of course, from its inception.
Yes.
And he was interested in profit all along.
Yeah.
He did not necessarily know how to run a business. Like his father before him, he was a brilliant engineer, electrical engineer, but he knew sod all about how to run a
run a
business.
business.
So when he moved the company to North Adams, he was making condensers and such, and according to one source in the company, Julian, his kid brother, had left a law practice in New York City to come and work with his brother, and he became plant manager, and he was cutting corners on production so that product was being returned almost as fast as it was going out.
Yeah.
And then they bought the manufacturing rights to the Visivox, which showed a 16 millimeter movie onto a rear projection screen, literally this size. And
Who would ever watch something on something that small?
yeah, but considering how big TV screens became,
Yeah.
so and it played it in synchronization with a 78 RPM record.
Ah, okay.
They bought Rolls-Royce parts, cabinets from the people who make Baldwin pianos, optics from Bell and Howell, electronics
Wow.
from, I forget the name of the electronics company. They put one together and then found the market was not going to support them. And one of the local investors said, they're not up against the wall, they've fallen through it.
Oh my God.
And they got one of the floods to take over the company, and he did it on the condition that he could do whatever he wanted. Run it, close it down, sell it piecemeal. The local investor said, do it. And within 6 years, RC was able to buy back controlling interest. And of course, he learned how to run the business from
okay.
Mr. Flood. So there were no new things except for new condensers and capacitors and such. So we have about 48 seconds remaining. Thank you very much for coming here tonight.
It was fun.
And
yeah.
anytime you want to be on the show again, just let me know and I'll be happy to have you on.
Okay. Yeah.
Joanne,
Interesting.
thank you very much for directing. We love you. Thank both of you for watching. Yes, both of you. Yeah. And we will be back. Well, I'll be back again on the first Friday in September. I'm not sure who I will have for a guest host, but I'm hoping it'll be a permanent guest host. So thank you for watching. Have a wonderful night.
Bye.